All right, hello and welcome to this final episode of the season. It is a somber day here in the Chroncast studios. I'm once again joined by my co-host Alex and our producer Zach. And without further ado, let's just get right into it. So the first segment that we have planned is season player grades. So this is going to factor in expectations, the role they were expected to play, how well they did it, and it will also cover both regular and postseason. So we're going to give Zach the lead on this, and he's going to list off some players, and we're going to give our responses.
Yes, so the first player I would like to mention from the Canucks this season is King Arturs Silovs.
I'm kind of torn between two grades here, but I'm going to go with an A- just based off what we got in the playoffs. I was considering either a B+ or an A-, but I'm going to go with A- just based on postseason performance. I think there were a few rocky starts in the regular season there, but he was given difficult circumstances, and when the pressure was on him, he really showed up. Ryan, anything for you?
Yeah, I'm giving him an A. I think he was our third string goaltender this year. I don't think anybody expected at the start when he was in the regular season. It wasn't a thing where you had expected him to play like a great game, even a good game. You know, a super young goaltender.
Yeah.
Just now starting to scratch the surface of being an NHL player, and then getting completely thrown off the deep end, having to go in the playoffs and exceeding all expectations, getting the Canucks within a win of the conference final, and just playing some unreal hockey and becoming a fan favorite. I got to give him an A.
Yep. All right. Next player is Mark Friedman.
C-, but remember the early days. There was like that 3-week stretch where I think him and Cole as a pair didn't give up a single even strength goal, so that was a fun time, but he just kind of petered out after a while. Don't mind keeping him next year as an 8th defenseman, but really not much more than that. Ryan?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna give him a C+. There wasn't really any expectation for him. He was a bottom pairing 7th defenseman at best. He did really well at the start, and then just sort of like faded and never really got back into the lineup at all, despite injuries and poor performances elsewhere. So yeah, just a really meh season overall.
Next up is a mid-season acquisition from the Calgary Flames, Elias Lindholm. Alex, what is your letter grade for him?
I'm going with a B-, but I feel like it could be higher based on his playoff performances. I think a lot of the regular season time he spent in Vancouver kind of struggled, but when he came back from the injury at the end of the regular season and during the postseason, he played well. I wonder if we're going to get him re-signed. I think there's a good chance we've seen the last of Elias Lindholm in Vancouver, but I will say I did really enjoy his time here for the most part.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give him a B. I think he disappointed a lot to start in Vancouver, but then again, you can't expect players like him to just come in and immediately start gelling in a completely new system. But in the playoffs, he was very, very good. He was one of our better players, one of our better offensive contributors, even when it felt like the team as a whole wasn't contributing offensively. And yeah, I'm giving him a B. I'm really hoping that we can work out a deal to keep him because I don't see many players being available that could replace him.
All right, next up is the backup goaltender, Casey DeSmith. Alex, what is your grade for him?
B. I think he had some rough play during time, but I think he showed up when he was needed the most. Obviously not going to be back next year because of how Silovs has been, but I did like DeSmith's time here.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a B+ for him. I think he did a very good job with just being a backup, right? Like he was our backup goalie. The whole year we were reliant on Thatcher Demko, and he stepped up when you needed him to. So yeah, I'm just giving him a B. It's unfortunate that he got hurt in the playoffs, but we were also very lucky that Silovs came in and played as well as he did.
All right, next up is Carson Soucy.
B+, but potentially could have been higher had he stayed healthy. I really liked Soucy when he played. I thought he had a good postseason. One of my favorite moments of the playoffs, you know the one I'm referring to, but I'm not going to say it. Yeah, I really like Soucy. I'm excited for what we're going to get next year, and I think he was a really great value pickup from Rutherford and Allvin.
Yeah, I'm going to give him an A-. I really liked Soucy this year. The injuries were unfortunate, but he was a good playoff performer. He definitely was one of those guys who you could tell was playing with his heart on his sleeve. And you want that from all 18 skaters every game.
Next up is Niels Oman.
B-, just not much to say about him. He was a fourth liner, and he was fine in that role.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that as well. B-. Fourth line center, penalty killer, did his job.
Yeah.
Next up is the Italian dream, Phil DiGiuseppe.
About the same. I'm gonna go with the B-. Again, thought he was, effective fourth liner. Never forget Phil DiGiuseppe on the first line at the start of the season. But yeah, B-.
What a time to be alive.
Oh, what a time.
I am going to give him a B+ because he was a depth forward, but he had moments where he was playing in like higher roles, playing with better players on his line, playing in the top six. And I think he did all right. I mean, he wasn't like going into the top six and scoring at Brock Besser, JT Miller level rates, but he was going into the top six and doing all right. So I'll give him a B+ for versatility.
All right. Next up is the Vezina finalist, Thatcher Demko.
A+, really. Not much more to say about him. He's one of the best goalies in the league.
I'm going to give him an A. I mean, he only played 50 games this year, got hurt in the playoffs, which was super unfortunate. I was really hoping to see the same playoff Demko that we got in 2020 come back. And yeah, he had a fantastic regular season, but the lack of the playoffs has just lowered it a little bit for me.
All right, next up is Evander Kane's best friend, Nikita Zadorov.
I want nothing more than to give Zadorov an A+ for his playoffs, but I will admit he was kind of rocky during parts of the regular season, so I'm going to drop it down to B+, A- territory. I really like him, though. I think he's a player who I really am hoping we can get a deal done with this offseason.
I am going to give Nikita Zadorov an A because even when he was rocky, he was still a physical player. I think he's, of the guys that are expiring pending free agents, he's the guy I want to keep the most because it's a dying breed of player, having someone like Nikita Zadorov who can be that like 6'6" gritty defenseman, but also providing like offense and providing energy. Just a super exciting player to watch and just completely integral for what you want in a team that can make a playoff run.
All right, the next player is one of Surrey's finest, Noah Olsen.
Is he from Surrey or Abbotsford?
It says Surrey on Hockey TV.
Fair enough. I'm just going to go with a B. I think, as a depth defenseman, he did fine. There were some bad games that lower his grade a little bit from where it could have been, but I have no problem with Juleson as like a seventh defenseman, and that seems to be where we're using him.
I'm going to give him a C+ because he had a lot of opportunities to get into the lineup, and when he was in the lineup, he was really inconsistent. So it was either he would have a really good game, and then it felt like the next game it'd be like, all right, I'm like, people are wanting him like out of the lineup again, and it's just, I don't know, I didn't see any consistency to his game. Even though I do like the physical aspect, I just don't think he made up for what he lacked by being physical.
Mayan won't like you talking about his favorite player that way.
Don't really care.
Had to get one final Mayan mention in before we break for the season.
Moving on, we have next up is Dakota Joshua.
A. Like Ryan said with Zadorov, this is the guy who I want us to get re-signed the most. I absolutely love the way Dakota Joshua plays, and I think he's an integral part of this team going forward. I think if we can't sign him, we need to find somebody else who plays a very similar role, and it can be hard to find those guys at an affordable rate. This is a guy who I really am hoping we see on the Canucks next year.
I'm going to give him an A+. I think not only did he do his job well as a fourth line physical, like checking forward, he was exceptional offensively. He clicked really well with that JBC line with him and Bluger and Garland. So just a completely fantastic player, and I'm just really, really wanting to keep him.
Right, next up is Pius Suter.
Suter's one who I find a little hard to grade because I think he was kind of streaky at times, but especially given the contract he's on, I have no objections to him, so I'm going to go with a B+. I think he exceeded expectations a little bit getting into the top six, but there were times where he was a little hard to notice.
Yeah, I'm going to give him a B-. I mean, like, he had a couple of really, like, the goal in Game 6 is one of the best moments in recent Canucks playoff history. But he had been really just, all right. Again, depth forward, did his job. And he had like the odd flash of goal scoring every now and then.
Next up, another center is Teddy Bluger.
Bluger, I think I'm going to have to give an A minus too. We brought him in. I kind of expected him to be a fourth line center when we brought him in, and he turned out to not only be that, but to be able to have that great stretch playing up on the third line with Joshua and Garland. I think he was everything you could have wanted and more. He's another guy who's a pending free agent, and I'm really hoping we find a way to bring him back. It seems to make too much sense to not bring him back.
Yeah, I mean, Bluger again did a good job this year in that bottom six role. I don't really think I never really had any like complaints about him, but I also never noticed him having like, really, really good games. So I would definitely say he's one of the more replaceable guys in our bottom six, but I would like to bring him back still.
All right, next up, one of the tallest players in the league, Tyler Myers.
Comfortably chaos giraffe, best year as a Canuck. I'm going to give him a B minus for it because there were times where the chaos giraffe was still coming out, but I think this year he's settled down a lot from how he's been playing in previous years. Excuse me. Yeah, there's some rumors that he might be willing to take a pretty team-friendly contract to re-sign, and if you can get that, and he's a guy who I really do think I would like to see stay in Vancouver.
I'm going to give him a B+, because I think compared to this was easily the best year of his contract, in my opinion. I think he contributed well on both sides of the puck. He was good on the power play. He was decent. He was decent defensively, which was like, you ask anybody about Tyler Myers' defense, the first 5 years you're going to get the same response, and that's that he was not defensively responsible. But this year, that felt like a switch completely changed. I don't know if it was coaching or just like something changing in his mindset, but he had a really good year this year, and I'm not sure I would want to see him come back just because of what the first 5 years looked like for him. But I mean, I'd be willing to take a flyer on him if he's willing to take a pay cut to stay and play in a reduced role.
Next up is a man who did not have a very good playoffs, to put it nicely, Ian Cole.
Cole's one who I'm having a hard time figuring out how to grade, but I'm going to go right now with the C-. I think during the regular season there were points where he looked pretty decent, but there were also some rough patches. He got healthy scratched a few times, and just that Edmonton series, I feel bad for the guy. He had a really tough time, and I think that's sealed the deal on his time in Vancouver.
Yeah, I'm gonna give Cole a C+. I mean, he was good in that bottom six, like that bottom pairing defensive role. I liked him there. He had a good regular season there. He's defensively sound, physical, whatever. And then he just got like every bad bounce going his way in that Edmonton series. And it's just I felt really bad for him. And I think that stretch alone has sort of just chased him out of Vancouver. Like it'll end up being like a Jake Gardiner treatment where he's sort of outcasted by the fans and just leaves.
All right, next up is Ilya Mikheyev.
Ilya, I love you. D. It was just that second half of the year was just horrific. I've no other word to describe it. Just I'm wondering if he's going to be a Canuck next year. I'm hoping he can bounce back from it wherever he ends up playing next year, but just bad season, man.
Yeah, I'm going to give Mikheyev... I don't know what I'm going to give Mikheyev. I think I'm going to give him a D, but I'm going to give him like a 51% D. Like I'm going to give him you've submitted the test, you think you failed the entire class, but you end up just barely passing with a 51. That's the kind of D that Mikheyev gets, because he did have a good first half of the season. And then he scored, what was it, like one goal in the second half of the season, or like two, and then did nothing in the playoffs. Missed a breakaway in Game 7. Just a really unlucky, bad season.
Playing with Elias Pettersson.
For the last like 60 games, playoffs included. And just, it was just really unfortunate to see that happen, because he was a great player last year, and I just don't know what happened.
Yeah, I think part of it might be the torn ACL too. Like, even if it didn't affect him physically, I think mentally recovering from that. So maybe you can get a bounce back next year, but not his year. Not his year.
All right, next up is Sam Lafferty.
Lafferty is another player who kind of had a tale of two seasons, because that first half of the year he was just on fire. Second half, again, he was getting healthy scratched at times, including in the postseason. There was some rough play. In the end, I think it'll average out to kind of being on the fringe of a B or a B minus. Don't know if he's back next year. I have really no strong opinion on bringing him back, but He's a player who at times can be very beneficial to have, but he can also disappear, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna give Lafferty a B plus because I felt like as a fourth liner, he did everything you want a fourth liner to do. He was physical, he was defensively responsible, and for a brief moment, he was scoring a lot of goals. And then when that kind of just fluttered out, he was still effective, but he wasn't as effective at actually putting the puck in the net. He was just more effective in other areas of it. So, yeah.
Next up is the first member of the 80 Games Played Club, Niels Höglander.
What a bounce back year from him. Rough postseason from him, I would say. He had some moments later in the postseason where he was starting to bring the energy again, but I think I'm going to give him an A- this year. It's hard to ignore how good of a regular season he had, especially after spending large chunks of time over the last couple of seasons in Abbotsford. Looking forward to what we're going to see from him next year, too. I think this could be a good step forward for him.
Yeah, I'm going to give Höglander an A-. I think he definitely bounced back. He played really well with Elias Pettersson, especially in the playoffs. And just, yeah, I've always been high on him. Like, even through all these trade rumors, I've never once wanted him gone because I've always sort of seen potential in him to be a star. And I think he's getting closer to that, and this season showed that he still has that potential despite what the naysayers have said about him.
Next up is the team's leading goal scorer, Brock Besser.
I mean, I think it's hard to give him anything lower than an A+. Best season of his career. What a story, too, with how much he's gone through over the past couple of years to have this good of a season. Great in the playoffs. Unfortunate how it ended. We're wishing him the best after those blood clots, but it's an A+ year from Besser. Just near perfect play.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Alex here. It's hard to give him anything but an A+. 40 goals, bounce back season. The most unfortunate ending with the blood clot before Game 7. Like, you literally, script writers could not have written a more unfortunate ending for his season.
The guy just can't catch a break.
Yeah, he couldn't catch a break, but he had such a good year, so much to be proud of. And again,
yeah,
the doubts, the trade rumors, whatever it was, he was never a guy that I lost faith in, and I'm just so happy to see him playing back to his potential again.
Right. Next up is Filip Hronek.
If you asked me this after Game 41 of the regular season, I'd probably be saying an A+. However, after the second half of the season where some of the offense dried up, he became a little more mistake-prone on defense. In the playoffs where he looked pretty much invisible, I'm going to drop him down to a B+. I think there was a lot to be disappointed in with Hronek in the second half after that first half. I'm not 100% sure if he's going to be back in Vancouver next year, given what his contract demands are. If the rumors that he wants $8 million a year are true, frankly, I would be trading him now. But, yeah, interesting season from Hronek, to say nothing else.
Yeah, I'm going to give Hronek a B. I think he was phenomenal in that first half. I really liked his game, but the playoffs especially, there were games and particular moments where he was just like a complete eyesore.
Yeah.
And I did like how he played with Hughes. I think he gels well with Hughes, but asking for more money than Quinn Hughes just because of that isn't really a fair judgment. So if he's asking for what is like $8 million a year, I'm nowhere near comfortable giving him that. So I'd like to see him back, but can't be for that much money.
If there's a reasonable contract, then I'd love to have him back. But if it's going to take $8 million to get him, he's not an $8 million player.
Yeah.
All right, next up is the team leader in points for the season, JT Miller.
Like Besser, hard to give anything but an A+. Just what a year from Miller. Showed up in big moments. Maybe my favorite player to watch this year, but yeah, no, I've loved Miller this year, and I've loved the bounce back he had from people wanting him gone last year to being such an important and beloved part of the team this year, where you had the whole arena chanting his name on multiple occasions.
Yeah, A+. You can't give someone who scores 100 points anything less than an A+. Like, just an unbelievable year. I think the league is starting to take note of him, finally establishing himself as a top forward in the league, because I genuinely believe that he is. And it was just, a very, very good year for him. Definitely a leader on the team, on and off the ice, and just, super impressed with JT Miller this year.
All right, and the next player, first player listed to have played all 82 games, the angry little elf, Connor Garland.
It's an A or an A- or A or an A+ for him. I'm going to go with the A. But just what a year from Garland again. I've said that so many times this episode, but he really impressed me this year with how he played after bouncing back from trade rumors and some rough play. Established himself as one of the most important energy guys you'll see on the team, and just the chemistry he had with Joshua, especially after the two of them fought in training camp, if you guys don't remember that. But he's my dad's favorite player, and he's one of mine too. Just love Garland.
Yeah, I'm giving Garland an A as well. He was really, really good this year. That line with him and Joshua and Bluger was fantastic. At some points, it was our best line, and in some games, it felt like Connor Garland was our best player. It did. He played his heart out for 60 minutes of all 82 games this year and playoffs.
Yeah,
and I was just really impressed with him.
Right, the penultimate player is number 40, who had a great regular season but seemed to shrink a little bit in the playoffs. Elias Pettersson.
He is so hard for me to grade because throughout the first half of the regular season, he was among our best players. There's at least some people talking about him as an MVP candidate in the Canucks fan base. That second half of the year, though, he was just pretty rough. In the playoffs, it didn't improve. It feels weird saying this for a guy who scored 89 points, but I'm going to have to go with a B-.
I'm going to give him a B because I felt like he was just inconsistent. Like it was, and you know what? It really is a testament to his value because it felt like at the beginning of the season when he was on, the whole team was on. Like best team in the league, no one can beat us. Team was on, and as the season went on and he started to struggle more and more with his scoring, it felt like the team's offensive production was consistent with his, in the sense that when he was off, the whole team was off, and when he was on, the whole team was on. And I think a good example of that was what the whole talk it, no passengers thing, how well they came out the next game and how they dominated offensively, and how even though Pettersson didn't score in that game, you could still notice that he was on the ice and taking shots.
Yeah.
And then the next two games after that and how they ended and how the season ended, I think that's the best little sort of thing to look at when examining how much his effect is on the team.
And the final player for a report card is El Capitan, Quinn Hughes.
He would be my Canucks MVP this year. A+. Best, maybe the best season a Canucks player has ever had this year. Like, I'm not going to flat out say that it is, but it's right up there. He's going to win the Norris Trophy. No Canucks defenseman has ever even been nominated before. A+ for Hughes.
Yeah, you can't give him anything other than an A+. Like this is a 100 out of 100 A+. He had such a great season, establishing himself as our captain, leading a really good team, putting up really good point totals, putting every doubt about his defensive game being weak completely to bed. Just an unbelievable 10 out of 10 perfect season from Hughes.
And he's just been such a great captain. I can tell you that for free.
All right. And with that, we wrap up our season-ending player grades, and now we can go into what we want to happen for the offseason. So, Alex?
Yeah. We've got a lot of free agents right now to re-sign. It's hard to say who we're going to be able to keep and who we're not going to be able to keep. I'd say my top priorities would probably be at the moment Joshua and Zadorov. As much as I love Elias Lindholm, I think he's probably going to have to walk. And then the other guys, Teddy Bluger, I would really like to see brought back. Seelovs is an RFA. He'll be brought back on a cheap deal, I'm 100% certain. Tyler Myers is a guy who, as we talked about earlier, I'd like to see brought back, but I do think he's replaceable. There's other guys on the market who, if you can get one of them, I wouldn't miss him too much. And really the big piece is what happens with Hronek. If we were to lose him, then the guy who I would really like to end up targeting is Brett Pesce. I think he's a really good replacement. I think I'm just a huge fan of his play. There's also Brandon Montour, who's currently set to hit free agency, who certainly would be interesting to pick up him, but I don't know how that'll work. Ryan, anything from you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with the team playing as well as they did this year, and a lot of uncertainty going into if they'll be able to keep it up. I think you try your best to keep as many core players as possible. So in a perfect world, I would keep all of Lindholm, Zadorov, and Joshua for sure, and Hronek if his asking price goes down after those playoffs. Because that group, they all gelled really well. But I understand that obviously the world isn't perfect, and unlike the Toronto Maple Leafs, cap space is a thing that we as Canucks fans are worried about. So I understand if you have to let go of Lindholm or you have to let go of Zadorov or Hronek. I would be crushed if Zadorov left because I think he's irreplaceable looking at the free agent class. But if Hronek is to leave, then you have guys like Brett Pesce available. Chris Tanev is available in a depth role if you have guys like Tyler Myers leaving.
Yeah.
Ian Cole as well. You have Matt Grzelcyk is one of the guys I would consider for that depth role as well from Boston.
Yep.
Montour and Pesce obviously as suitable Hronek replacements. I think they would go well with Hughes.
Yep.
And there are good depth forwards available, or not even depth. There are good forwards available in this free agency. So if you are to lose someone like Elias Lindholm, I would be intrigued by potentially bringing in Teuvo Teravainen or a Martin Necas if the Canes are looking to trade him.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of options out there for replacing those top six forwards if they're leaving. I just think that it's really important that you get Zadorov and Joshua to stay because those guys are the most irreplaceable, in my opinion.
Yeah, going back to Necas, I'm a huge fan of his. He's probably my favorite potentially available player who we could add to our team if the Canes' asking price is moderately reasonable for him. But even if he's not available, there's potentially guys like, Tyler Toffoli available, or someone like, I'm a big fan of Anthony Mantha. Obviously not as good as some of the other options, but he's still a pretty solid player. And going to kind of depth guys on defense, I think someone like Brendan Dillon could even be interesting for a bottom pair role. Local kid. There's some rumors that he might be willing to take a little bit of a hometown discount to come to the Canucks. Or even just as kind of like a 6-7 defenseman type guy, someone like an Ilya Lyubushkin or an old friend Troy Stecher. But I don't know, it's hard to know until the market fully opens up because, guys could extend. We don't know who we're extending even at this point yet. So, yeah, Zach, anything you find interesting?
I honestly have almost zero hockey knowledge. I'm just intrigued to see how the team can bounce back because especially the defensive core is a lot of expiring contracts. It'll be intriguing to see how we bounce back next season where if we've overpaid a lot of guys or if we just let a lot of guys walk because they wanted to be overpaid for this season, just how the team recovers in 24-25.
Yeah.
And
I'll just add
this offseason, it's a big test for Allvin, I think, if he's going to be able to manage all these assets and still ice an equally competitive, if not improved, roster next year would be incredibly difficult for him, I would think.
Yeah.
Especially with the stigma against coming to Canada that a lot of American team-based free agents have. So yeah, just there's definitely a challenge there for Allvin, but it's definitely doable, in my opinion.
Yeah, just two things I want to mention here. One is, given that we're probably going to have Seelovs as our backup next year behind Demko, I think one thing I would like to see us try to do is try to get a goalie for Abbotsford who has some NHL experience in the event that there's an injury, so we're not forcing Nikita Tolopilo to step into an NHL role before he's ready. Someone like, obviously not necessarily this guy, but like when we signed Colin Delia a few years ago to be our third stringer, something like that I think would be cool to see just to give us a little bit more stability at that position. And there is one guy who I'm really hoping we can sign as a winger, Riley Tuft. So for those unfamiliar, he's 26 years old, has spent most of his career bouncing between the NHL and the AHL, currently with the Avs organization, but very big guy, hits hard, and he's pretty fast. So I'm wondering if that's the kind of guy who, if you give him the right situations, could have a bit of a breakout. Kind of similar to the way Dakota Joshua broke out around the same age when he came to Vancouver and was given a proper NHL opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys out there where you'll sort of throw like a minimum deal, $1 million deal at them.
Yeah.
And just sort of see how, what can happen. I know Travis Boyd had stepped up at some points in Arizona, and I know he's a guy that was, obviously a Canuck at one point.
Canucks
and
legend.
I'd be interested in potentially bringing him back after seeing him playing with so much ice time in the Arizona organization. If he's wanting to, if he's wanting a move now that he's a free agent, right as the team is relocating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there might be some guys from the Artists formerly known as the Arizona Coyotes who are available for even as trades, because there were some rumors that guys were not thrilled about the idea of moving to Utah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know who I would trade for from them, to be honest, because I don't think we need a guy like Clayton Keller in our team.
There's some guys who I think could provide depth more than anything. So, like,
yeah,
someone like a Juuso Välimäki maybe could be useful for us on, like, one of the lower pairs.
Yeah. In terms of depth forwards, another guy who I'd like is Jordan Martinook.
Yes.
Yeah, he's 31 now, free agent from Carolina, a team that's going to be definitely cap strapped this year. I'd like to see potentially him coming in as a third, fourth line player. And I think having him on a line with Joshua, like centering a line of Joshua and Garland, could be electric, to be completely honest.
Yeah. So Martinook, Tuft as well. I actually wrote a little bit about this in my most recent article. Check it out on our website. But Martinook's a guy who I can remember watching. I have a bit of a childhood connection to Martinook because he played for the Vancouver Giants in the WHL, and I remember going to games, and him and Brendan Gallagher were like the two stars of the team at that time, and I remember watching them. So I've wanted him as a Canuck for years now, but now it actually does feel like a move that would potentially make sense for everyone involved with where the Canucks are at a team, where Martinook is in his career and the role he brings. So obviously I'm biased because it is kind of a dream come true to me, and it would be like bring kind of a childhood hero back to the Canucks, but I'd be really happy to see Martinook sign.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have anything else to talk about for the offseason, so if you want to talk about the finals,
yeah,
we can
not
talk
much.
about the finals.
I think we covered pretty much all of it. You want to go into the finals?
Sure. I don't know what else to say other than Vamos Gatos.
Let's go Panthers.
I don't want to get too into it because I was fully a Dallas Stars fan at the end of last round, and it set me up for just as much frustration as watching the Canucks. So, yeah, I just can't imagine. I can't imagine the Oilers winning a cup, as it would literally be the hardest thing I've ever had to watch on TV in my life.
Yeah. So I'm currently, we obviously don't have a video version of the podcast, but I'm currently wearing a child-sized Roberto Luongo Florida Panthers jersey as we record. You can see it's a child-size for those watching because the sleeves are at my elbow. I'm fully on the Panthers train right now, mainly out of spite for the Oilers, and obviously my childhood love of Roberto Luongo. I'm nervous, I would say, going into this series based on how confident I was that Dallas would win last time and seeing that not happen. I'm also thankful that I'm going to be on a different continent for the end of the series, so even if the Oilers do win, I'm not going to have to watch it live. I'll just see my phone and be miserable for an hour. But yeah, Florida, please save us. Anyone got any predictions for the series, or do we want to avoid jinxing anything?
I want to avoid it, even though I said Panthers were going to win the cup in our last
I'm going to be careful what I say because I got in a bit of hot water last time, so I won't say anything.
Yeah, I'm going to join you guys on that and just avoid jinxing anything, but like,
we're all scared.
Let's be real. Pretty much everyone in the Canucks fan base is going to be cheering for the Panthers at this point, and we're no exception. So please, for the love of God, I think most Canucks fans are. Pretty much everyone I've spoken to in the Canucks fan base.
Real Canucks fans will be cheering for the Panthers.
I saw this on Twitter the other day. Somebody was tweeting, pretty much Edmonton fans, obviously not included, but any hardcore hockey fans in Canada are likely to be cheering for the Panthers, whereas the more casual ones will be more likely to gravitate towards Edmonton to see a Canadian team win. Obviously, it's not going to be the case 100% of the time, but I think by and large, that's fairly accurate as an assessment.
I've never quite understood the whole Canadian Cup thing, because it's like, if you're really invested in the sport, you'd rather watch the next 100 Cups stay out of Canada than one enter the town of your rival.
Yeah. No, and Canada's team is whoever is playing the other Canadian team.
Yeah. It's especially confusing for me seeing my parents, who are a Flames fan and a Canucks fan, both cheering for the Oilers together. It's genuinely made me consider like just moving out because I don't quite understand it. I never will understand it, and they both think that I'm crazy for cheering for the Panthers.
And to my mom and dad, I'd like to say just right now, love you and thank you for cheering for the Panthers with me. You guys get it.
Alex's parents, get the couch ready. That's my message to them.
We'll make sure we have burgers stocked.
Sick. Okay. With that being said, I mean, I don't have anything else to say. So, thanks everyone for being here.
Just big thank you to everyone who's listened to our first season. Is it the best quality of podcasting? No, but we're going to get there, and we really want to thank everyone who takes time out of their day to listen to this.
And also apologize.
Just take pride in the fact that you got it on the ground floor here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so with that being said, we're done. See you guys in September or potentially July if the Canucks have an interesting free agency.
We don't know when we'll see you next, but we will see you again.
Yes, that is for sure. Bye.